I see people are coming in. We are going to wait a few minutes until we're going to give everybody a couple of minutes if they're coming from another meeting or something of that nature. So just bear with us. I will ask that if you can put in the chat where you are currently based, where you are from, anything of that nature. I am based in Chicago, but I am currently in New York, but Chicago is home. It'd be great to see where people are. So really welcome to this webinar. And again, we're very, very happy to have you guys here. I see Lindsay put in the chat. And again, if you could, it'd be great to know where you guys are currently located. I'm looking in the chat. We have Elaine in Chicago. Lindsay is in Chicago. For some reason, even Chris Georges is in Chicago. Chris, you're actually in Chicago now. Jody, Aurora. I don't even, where's Juan? Where is he located? Liliana in Chicago, Juan in Miami. Vic is in Chicago. We probably should have done this live. We have all these Chicago people. Again, we're going to wait a few more minutes. I will say before we introduce everybody and get going, is that if there's some particular concerns or things that you'd like for us to reach out to you with, always put that in the chat, and we will do so. If you have questions along the way, put that in the chat as well. I'll be repeating that, but just thought I'd say that now. And I see that Carrie is from San Francisco. Welcome, welcome. We're totally looking forward to having this discussion. And we're going to wait about one to 2 more minutes just to give everybody a chance to kind of get in. All right. And Jody put in the chat what country you might be from, because we get a lot of folks from different countries. I see Anita, welcome from Seattle. As we wait, it actually also would be great to know what function you might perform in your organization. Be great to see that as well. So if you feel inclined, be great so we can kind of address, make sure what we're talking about hits some of the things that you might be interested in. You can actually put that in the chat as well as to if there's anything you'd like to put in the chat. It looks like we are going to get started. I am going to start it here. I am Reginald Pond. Most people call me Reggie, and you can do so too in the chat. This is the Collider Group and Intelligence a webinar, and this is Beyond the Resume, helping diverse teams understand, connect, and collaborate. I get the opportunity, and I don't get to do this as much. I'm always so happy to be able to introduce Chris Georges. She is the COO of the Kaleidoscope Group. You will be talking to her shortly. Then we have Juan Betancourt, the CEO of Human Intelligence, myself, Reginald Ponder. And then in the background is Lindsay Seardep. I always say her, why do I want to say her name wrong? Lindsay, help me out before I say it wrong again.
No problem, Reggie. It's Ciardelli. Italian descent, so it's hard to say.
Thank you. Thanks. See, I knew that. I knew that. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And she is the senior business development consultant. And when you guys have some issues, she'll be one of the people who will be reaching out to you if there's some things that you'd like to know. And she'll also be manning the chat. any questions that you have, trying to make sure that we answer them. If we don't answer them throughout this piece, don't worry about it. We'll get back to you and we'll make sure that we'll answer. So let me tell you a little bit about the Kaleidoscope Group and Human Intelligence. And when we look at the Kaleidoscope particularly, well, actually, let me have Lindsay do a poll. Lindsay, take away our first poll.
Absolutely. So thank you all for joining us today. We're going to start off with a little bit of an interactive poll. All right, we're going to launch this. So tell us what percentage of your organization feels that DEI is a priority. So I launched the poll. We like to get at least 90% participation. So we'll give you a couple minutes here. Reggie wants me to sing a song.
I do. Last time I did Jeopardy, the dun dun dun, somebody said I don't own rights, so I don't want to get us sued here. So I will not do the Jeopardy song. But we have 58%.
Yeah.
I need a few more people to answer this question.
Couple more here. All right, we're at 66%. Let's give us a couple more seconds here. Let's get that attendance up.
Okay, we have some shy ones here, Lindsay, and it looks like we're going to be at 66%. No,
Right.
that hurts. But when we look at this overall, you can look at these results, and you see that 38% say that it's 100%. You have 50% saying 25%, and then a 38% that's saying that's not sure. And this is going to be really interesting and actually key as we begin to talk about this subject today and delve deeper into the subject matter. But before we do that, now I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Kaleidoscope Group of Human Intelligence. And when you look at the Kaleidoscope Group and understand who we are, 30 years in the business, over 100 plus globally located consultants and facilitators, over 1,000 clients that we've helped to move forward, and we've tailored different things for them. Hey, one of the things that's important is that we don't use a cookie cutter approach, because even when you have the same problem, we understand that there are nuances within your organization. We are a minority owned company, 27 languages are spoken. We are a global company, so we do a lot of work. We have 17 strategic alliance partners, 6 practice areas. And we like to say that we are real people having real conversations about real issues to create real change and impact. And so then if you talk about impact, you look at Human Intelligence, and they're one of our partners who helps us make that kind of impact. And the users of that product, you won't even understand it until we get into all the details, but over 600,000 people, over 30,000 teams, 18 industry awards. Understand why there are 18 different awards. They should win more, by the way, but Juan is just smiling because he's saying, Reggie, go ahead, do that for me. 12 languages, globally. They do a lot of work globally as well, 189 global solutions. And so they support a lot of different countries. And 78% of the companies that they work with are remote or hybrid. And that's really important when we actually get into the work here. So now I get the pleasure of introducing our COO, Chris Georges. She runs the Kaleidoscope Group. I'm always happy, Chris, when I get an opportunity to have these discussions with you, and today is no different. Welcome, Chris Georges.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate you taking your valuable time to have a conversation today on some important work. I've been at Kaleidoscope Group for 30 years, and pretty much since we started way back in '93, we are considered a pioneer. And, you know, really at the end of the day, the industry from where we began to where we are now has really advanced and become a lot more sophisticated, and truthfully become a lot more specialized. So as we've had the great pleasure of being pioneers and leaders in the work, I think, the one thing I would say is, the work is really headed into some new spaces and places. And the real key for success for organizations is really how to think about it from an impact and sustainability vantage point. And so when we talk about it, we really talk about making sure that DEI impacts 5 major areas of your organization. You have to be thinking about it as part of the infrastructure and where the organization is headed. So how does it, really kind of take hold? And then when you're thinking about that, you're looking at it, at the place of the board of directors and the governance of the organization. You're looking at it, through, the C-suite and through the entire structure. You're also then saying, how does it now translate into departments, teams, and individuals? Departments, teams, and individuals. And if I were to be honest with you, that's where we're headed. How to really operationalize this with department, teams, and individuals. And so with that, well, we've got some great solutions and capabilities to help that process and progress. We have also partnered with, Human Intelligence, and Juan is going to tell us a little bit more about how to impact those areas of the organization. Because at the end of the day, we know if you don't get to departments, teams, individuals, managers, and supervisors, they make or break everything. It's not going to take hold. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend here, Juan, give a little bit about himself and the organization.
Thanks, Chris. And thanks everybody at Kaleidoscope. Pleasure to be here. Thanks everyone for attending today. Very excited to share with you our partnership with Kaleidoscope and how a joint solution between their frameworks and solutions and our software solution really does, the word is operationalize diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to all people at a company, whether it's 500, 5,000, 50,000, or soon with 1 million people at Accenture that'll be using our solution. Imagine a world where it's distributed employees and COVID impacts, and there's now people working remote and hybrid. Take the world of personality tests and assessments that we all know and love, but often stop at the workshop, and imagine those being embedded in your daily workflows of email, Slack, Zoom, video conference, where you can get great insights at any moment to work and collaborate better. It's a transformational product. It's easy to implement, and Kaleidoscope and Human Intelligence together can take all of your DEI B initiatives and make them operationalized across an entire company in literally 24 hours. And that's the power of what we've created. And that's the differentiator versus any other assessment tool on the planet. And so we're excited to share with you today how that might work.
Thanks so much, Juan. I want to turn it back over to Lindsay for our next poll. And Lindsay?
Thank you, Reg. Alrighty, so our next poll here is, in today's worsened economy, is your DEIB budget at risk of being cut? Tell us a little bit more about that. So I'm going to launch this poll. Please select one of the options below. Again, we like to get at least 90% participation, so please select one of the options.
Now that you've settled in, I'm hoping that we will get at least we did 66% last time, gang. But let's get in there and answer this question. We have about 30 more seconds for that.
All righty, we're at 52%, 58%, 64%, 70%. Let's get one more in there. We're almost there. All right, we got our almost 80% participation. We're going to end this poll. All right.
And Chris, what do you see there?
I mean, I see that there's some real varied responses and reasons why.
What do you see there?
Were you asking me?
I think he said Juan. Yep.
Oh, yeah, I think it's interesting that half the participants, they haven't got directionally where it's headed in terms of DEI investment. I think a lot of companies are in budget season. So maybe this question in January, people will know if their budget's cut or not. So I think the timing of this question is also interesting. A lot of budgets are up in the air, but it's good to see that 31% or 1 in 3 are sure that it doesn't matter about the economy. Their companies are still committed to DEI.
Excellent. You
I think Reggie's having,
is this dude?
hey, Reg, I
Let's
think he's having some,
discuss. It was a problem.
Yeah, Reggie, your micro, your audio is choppy. I think your bandwidth is low.
yeah. So Juan, tell us a little bit about the guy here on the slide. Give us some insight about this.
Yeah, so I think when COVID came and kind of impacted the US working environment in March of 2020, within 6 months, people going remote and or hybrid or both, at some point, everyone in the country felt this at some point. Oh my God, my computer's not hooked up right. How do I get a fax out? How do I get I don't have a copy machine. How am I going to do the same job before? What is this person saying? I can't even see them. Collaboration and communication went down and productivity went down, and there was a loss of human connection. And I think 100% of people felt like this individual at some point.
Yeah.
And so the point of this slide is it's still there. And a lot of people still feel this, and it's not going to go away. Human connection went down in March of 2020. Tech adoption before that, even before COVID, was already going up, and remote and hybrid work continues to go up, and human connection will continue to go down. So do we sit here and say, well, we got to fix these curves? No, we can't change tech adoption. We can't change the effect COVID had on the world and how we work, and the future of work being today the way it is, and also the differences of people now and of age groups, and how all these diverse groups of people want to interact, but now they're even less in contact. And so this is the reality. I don't know, Chris, if you want to address this slide as well.
Absolutely. And I think, just the game of what's important for organizations and for people is we're on the cusp of a new era. We've been here for a while. I think business and individuals are trying to figure out what's important for them and what do they really need to be successful and be able to do their job, have a great experience, all the while producing great outcomes. We haven't arrived there yet, but I think that's a lot of what we're seeking collectively.
And Chris and Juan, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Chris, you mentioned a little earlier about sustainability, and if we look at that slide again, I'd be interested for you and Juan to talk about how this relates to that very important component.
Yeah, it's a great question, Reggie. I think when we say sustainability, it's very much connected to operationalizing. And the operationalizing really needs to take hold at all the levels I mentioned in the beginning. And I think the industry and business has done a pretty good job of trying to determine why it's important for their business and for their industry, what it means to their culture, how they maybe need to be positioning and thinking about it, and the impacts that it has to all parts of the business. Where I think they've fallen short and where the great opportunity remains is to say, now that we think we have answers to all of this, how do we get everybody to, one, buy into it, two, understand it against the role that they play every day and how they work together, and then three, make it a part of how they think, how they work, how they collaborate, how they connect. And so I think the industry was going there, then COVID came along and had us take quite a few steps back and reevaluate and calibrate what we really mean by this, and the fact that we all now know it's critically important. How do we make it really make sense and also bring value? Because oftentimes we are businesses or mission-driven organizations that have to achieve important things.
Well, I'm really glad that you actually segued to the next slide, which is you talked about COVID, and talk a little bit about COVID's impact.
Yeah, so specifically, here are some numbers behind how COVID has changed the way we work. Remote workers, people working, from home at some point of the week, has gone from 4% before COVID. Typically, everybody had like a Friday optional for a lot of people, to now 38%.
Wow.
78% of US companies are now actually mandating or implementing hybrid or remote environments. And 82% of employees actually want to stay remote or hybrid. They've kind of taken a bite of the apple and they love the taste. However, they do realize that 1 in 3 say they have lost collaboration and isolation and feel isolated. As a result, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging has become even more difficult to accomplish now post-COVID than even pre. Chris, thoughts on these numbers?
Absolutely agree with all of these numbers. And I also think, obviously, the folks here on the phone probably are already reckoning with the fact that if people feel a decline in collaboration, if people feel isolated, their desire to really want to stay in the organization is also going to diminish. And so now there's a whole kind of talent adjustment that's happening, and people aren't willing to stay in places the way that they used to, because the connection and the collaboration oftentimes is what kept them there to begin with. Not saying it was always perfect, but at least they had counterparts and they had a way of existing where they were able to achieve that. So without that, organizations are also facing talent challenges that they never had to face before.
Why are people feeling disconnected at work? And what's the polls show, the surveys? Well, it turns out that the number one reason people are disconnected in all the polls seems to be different personalities and work styles. But you can also combine that with how hard it is to get to know coworkers at 22%. I'm sorry, at 19%. So if you add this up, these two together, it's 43% of people feel that it's basically, I don't understand others at my company. I don't get to know them. And the remote and hybrid work environments are adding to that. So how does human intelligence help with this? What is a software going to do to make work more human, right? How does technology make work more human? This is what we've created at Human Intelligence. And with the help of diversity and getting it into organizations in a very powerful change management way, it's been operationalizing DE&I initiatives everywhere. Human Intelligence and the Kaleidoscope solution is the future of DE&I and improved inclusion and belonging for peer-to-peer and team collaboration. Human Intelligence is a simple, scalable plug-in tool that you click one button and it's now in all of your other tools for communication. And it delivers great insights about people for better understanding, connecting, and communicating in all of the collaboration tools that your companies already use, such as Microsoft Teams, Outlook, Gmail, Slack, Zoom, WebEx, and many more that are coming soon.
So one of the things that people are always concerned with is that I have another thing, and what you're basically saying is not another thing. It can work with the things that you currently have, because you already know I don't want another thing.
Yes, and Reggie, it's a great point. For the first 5 years of this company, we actually created another software platform where you'd have to sign in and open up Human Intelligence to go get this insight. People don't have time. So the last 3 years, our clients working with the largest companies in the world, Coca-Cola, Dollar General, Lyft, Accenture, companies that really care about diversity, equity, inclusion said, we want these wonderful insights in our existing workflows, our existing collaboration platforms. So that's what we built over the last 2.5, 3 years, a plugin where we kind of stream all the insights from what we all know is personality tests, stream them already into your tools. And that's why our tagline today is that we don't make the collaboration tools you use, like the ones there you're seeing the logos, we make them better.
I see you trying to get in, Chris.
The only thing I was going to add is, and you do it with the voice of every individual at the core of it, which is, you know, as we're working with organizations and we're helping them really understand their DEI baseline, the number one area of opportunity that comes up every time is employees don't feel like they have a voice in the things that matter to them and the things that are important for them, for the organization. And so this tool really is centered around who the individual is and gets their voice into the things that matter. So collaboration, connection, and great performance can happen with great relationships at the core.
And so what's interesting, Chris, when you say that, is that, so the first thing is, I don't want another tool. So thank you, Juan. You helped me out there. But then the next thing is that you're telling me that it's different, that it's proprietary, that there's something that I haven't seen before. And you know me, you have to convince me on this one. So what's proprietary about this?
So there is a scientifically validated tool. If I can get the next slide. A scientifically validated tool for 30 years. It's been validated over 30 years. That's 10 minutes. We call it the BMW assessment, which measures behaviors. So like any other personality tests, picture, DISC, predictive index, strength finders, all of these different tools like Berkman caliper, five dimensions, they all measure behavior. So we do that as well. We also measure motivators. Okay. Basically, you're looking at Hogan or Lominger, a couple of TTI has several tools like this. We measure those, but much quicker.
But in case people don't know what those are, can you just spend a moment when you start naming those motivators?
Yeah, these motivators, like what your value system are. You motivated by making money or being of service? Are you individualistic and a self-starter or more team oriented? So the kind of values, these values actually end up driving your behaviors. And it's our tools based on the Alpert Springer scale from Harvard back in like the 60s. The behavioral part of our test is based on DISC. And then what most of those other tools were built for were for self-awareness. They did not take in consideration a third area, which is how does the environment give me energy or take energy away? So one of the problems with DISC and predictive index and many of the behavioral tools, as well as many of the motivational tools and values-based tools, is you can have two people with the same exact results with DISC or the same exact results with Hogan, one really successful in a job at a company and one miserable and not successful in the same role at the same company, same exact psychology. Well, there's this third dimension of work energizers. What are my work styles and what environment do I work best in? And so those tools weren't made for that. Our tool also measures that. So it's probably the most comprehensive tool in the market. And what we measure in 10 minutes, no one else in the world can measure in less than 1 hour. So that's kind of, but you still don't want our tool, and we're not selling an assessment. We're selling a collaboration plugin, because what's special about what we do isn't just that we can measure more quicker. It's that the insights don't die the day that you take it in a workshop and put it in a folder, or put it above your cubicle so people can see it when they're working from home and never go to the office anymore. Okay. Our insights are now flowing throughout your organization and all your workflows on any device, on Outlook, Zoom, WebEx, Zoom, etc. So
now I want to see what you're talking about.
Right? Yeah, because this is the special sauce. When you
now I want to see. You told me all this stuff. Come on, Juan, help me out.
Perfect. So here we go. I'm going to not do a full demo. We're just going to show some screenshots. But let's say you have a company on Outlook or Gmail. For example, Coca-Cola uses Outlook. 10,000 people were given a link to take our personality test on a Monday. And on Tuesday, when they walked into their office or in their home office and they opened up email, they would write to somebody. They'd see this little EQ everywhere or human intelligence button already there. And when they clicked on someone's name, this little panel on the right would open up with tips for how to communicate with Carrie. For instance, Carrie likes to challenge assumptions. So when I write to Carrie over here, in my email, it's giving me tips that pop up and say, I might say, Carrie, for this proposal, feel free to challenge the assumptions we have. Carrie doesn't like authoritarian attitude. So instead of telling Carrie what I usually would do, which is, hey, I want your feedback by tomorrow, but that could piss him off or her off. Okay, I would say, Carrie, by when can you get me your feedback? And so real-time insights to improve collaboration and come to the middle of how that person likes to be spoken or written to. Similarly,
No, hold on, Juan, hold on. So you're telling me, stop, you went over that too quick. Chris, this is your guy and he just flew through that. You're telling me that this will help me better communicate. It's not foolproof because people might have different needs or what are different moods maybe, but you're telling me that I'm getting these tips to better communicate with the people that I'm interacting with on a real-time basis.
How to communicate better. And as you can see, there also how to influence someone, how to motivate them, what their learning style is. So if you're doing a kind of training, all of the things that typically take months to learn around somebody, this is at your fingertips instantly if you want it. It's not very intrusive.
When I click the motivating one, I know this is not the demo, you're saying I'll get some other tips.
Another pop-up will happen with another 4 bullet points.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
And Chris, what are your thoughts? Yeah, about something like this.
And again, what's so beautiful about this is all based on what Carrie said. So it's not about what Juan's assumptions about what he's picked up on Carrie. This is actually from Carrie's voice and Carrie's perspective. And that, I think that's the real differentiator here. And it really does give an opportunity for us to really see what's important for people and what do they need so that they can really be effective and be motivated and feel productive and feel respected.
Wow.
It's giving everyone a voice, and it's what we all experience in our personal relationships. You know, I've been married 5 years and I come to every conversation that's important in a different way than I did 5 years ago. It's because I now understand my wife and what triggers her, what doesn't. If you could apply those insights instantly to all employees at an organization, productivity, collaboration, all improve instantly.
I think the thing that, Chris, that you pointed out is that it came from Carrie. Because you and I have had this discussion about people making assumptions about other folks. Well, I think this is how Chris might respond to something. I'm going to take a guess, but she seems like this is what I should send to her. But you are informing me that this is the way in which these are the things that are important to you from a motivation perspective, from a communication perspective. You've informed me in that way.
Yeah. And imagine this is helpful for people on your own team, but imagine the vice president 2 levels up above your boss, 3 organizations over in another city that you've never met, and you're 25 or 35 years old, and it's the most important proposal ever. You've never seen this person, you've never spoken to this person, and you're about to send an email that's going to lead to your promotion or not. Wouldn't it be great to know how that person likes to receive information? Hey, don't put too much detail. They're very conceptual, right? Like something as simple as that leads to a not approved or approved, right? And people are forgetting how to connect. This tool will help make everyone a better human.
And now you can and make you really starting to think about others more so than self. And so oftentimes we're busy. We're trying to get work done. We're trying to manage everything, work life, personal, professional, all of that. It has us actually stop and think about others just as much as we're thinking about what's on our to-do list or even what we're going through in the moment.
And that muscle memory changing is exactly how you start to change diversity of thought, inclusion, and belonging. You start to have people stop for a second. Not every email. This is for the important emails. You know, our usage usually is about 10 to 15 times a month, depending on the size of the company. So someone writes, you know, 300-400 emails a month. on average, okay, or more these days. And they're only using this 10 to 15 times. It's kind of like when you use LinkedIn, it's for background checking someone in your own company. It's for that important message, that important meeting that you're going to be meeting someone. That's what this is for. This is not to become a daily, every moment use, but it's for those important meetings for people you don't know, 10 to 15 times a month. And that starts to change so that regardless of race, regardless of how old someone is, sexual orientation, regardless of all the primary diversity things we think about, you're actually thinking of every soul that you're going to communicate with or collaborate as different. And if you do that enough, then it also encompasses a better understanding and pause and wanting to learn about different races and ethnicities, et cetera.
I like that. I stopped you from going on to the next slide. Go ahead, Juan. You can go to the next slide.
So thanks, Reggie. So another example would be an Outlook and Gmail calendar, right? Another great way where companies are now remote and distributed and lose productivity is when they're working in teams on Zoom and going to meetings either physically. So let's say there's an important meeting like this one here. You now click on that meeting and it will pop up. When you click on this button here, it'll pop up meeting tips regarding these that say there's 2 and 10 others. These 12 people like to work in certain ways. These meeting tips on the right are actually tips for this specific meeting. Okay. It also would then show you more detail and show you, for instance, who's really decisive in their behavior, so that if you're leading the meeting and let's say you're assigning homework for the next day, something urgent, you probably want to give it to your decisive people there, Victor and Russ, and not to your deliberate people who will feel really stressed out. It's actually my picture, like me or Pedro, we're very deliberate. I don't want something assigned to me for the next day. In addition, you can see holding safe space. If you're leading a meeting and you don't know everyone and you just ask questions of the group, well, usually your outgoing, free-form, spontaneous people will just answer. But what about your shy, reflective, and cautious groups that are there highlighted? Maybe at the end of people speaking, go to Carrie, go to Charles, go to Victor and say, hey, what do you guys or you women or you people think about this question? And so all of these insights about groups of people in terms of their behaviors, their work styles or motivators, you can drill down on one person like John Ordonez and get specific commuting tips and motivating tips if maybe they're a little shyer or you want to kind of probe them in a respectful way and make them feel safe. These are all amazing things that are now embedded in your calendar and meetings. Reggie, Chris?
Yeah, I want to jump in here. So we get the intelligence part, but does that take away the human part? Talk about that, because there's still that human interaction. That does this take place of that?
No,
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
If anything, I think it's data, really meaningful data that you can use when you think about putting teams together. What's going to be important for those teams? And what we like to talk about in DEI, who's not on that team? So if we know that whatever you're working on, or whatever you're working on requires, 6 traits or characteristics for whatever you're trying to achieve to be effective. And when you look at the team you're thinking about, it gives you an idea of, where you're balanced, where you're heavy, what you're missing. So it also gives you the ability to make some informed decisions on what you're going to need to put a team together to achieve a task or a project or a process and to be successful. I'm not saying it's the all and only answer, but it's a lot of great guidance and insight for leaders, for individual contributors, for teams to be able to be set up for success and be effective and check and adjust in a way that is efficient and effective.
So that's really helpful. And Juan, you kind of previewed this a little bit when you talked about that there are different ways to look at diversity. And Chris, we at Kaleidoscope Group, we look at diversity in various ways. We look at primary, secondary, workplace, and style. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's important as we get a little bit further into this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously Juan just shared kind of some of the elements of behaviors and personality that kind of go into the tool and what it calls out. And most people in DEI are kind of used to what we call the dimensions of diversity at Kaleidoscope, and they're always showcased in lots of different ways. The fact and the point of it really is there are a lot of things that make up who people are. One, in how they see themselves, and two, how the world sees them. But at the end of the day, this primary bucket, and Juan just alluded to it, oftentimes these are pretty much the main things we think about when we think about people. And the truth of the matter is there's so much more depth to who people are and what make people who they are. In fact, you know, when we get called in, especially if an organization is experiencing a tensious situation where they've got a group of people or two people who aren't getting along, oftentimes they call us and they're self-diagnosing a little bit and thinking that the issue is race or it's gender or it's sexual orientation based. And the truth of the matter is when we get in there and we actually do our digging and do our good work, we actually find out that the issue lies in the fourth bucket, in style, leadership style, work style, habits, you know, what people expect oftentimes are very disconnected. And so instead of people seeing it at that level, they're kind of seeing it at the primary level. And so we really have a great opportunity here to not only just dig in and understand and make sure that all the dimensions of diversity, and there's a lot more than these, are thought through and considered when we look at people and how we think about people, and then how we think about teams and achieving goals.
Wow, I guess that flows really well into Juan, because you talked about this whole thing of diversity of thought earlier. So it flows right into us talking a little bit more about diversity of thought.
Yeah, we've actually launched specific modules in our platform for that. So specifically when you go into Microsoft Teams, which is a collaboration platform that most large enterprises use, we have a module to show that diversity of thought. So leaders and team members can leverage, see where there's gaps and leverage people's strengths and fill where there are gaps. So this is a new practical tool for nudging employees to think differently about diversity, not so much just as race or ethnicity, but thinking about it in a broader sense. For instance, if you look at here on the left, if you look at the motivators or values, you can see that this team has a lot of people who are helping, which is a service motivation, and a lot of people are freedom, which is an innovative motivation. They're lacking, though, practical people. So they're not very diverse in thinking. So this is a group, for example, that will have lots of whiteboard discussions, 3-hour meetings. People talk about the research they've read and how they can do this and they can do this. But at the end of the day, nothing ever happens. Right?
I've been in those meetings. We've been in
those meetings, right?
Ourselves at our own company.
Right. And so some companies will say, wow, we need to be more practical. And it doesn't mean you have to automatically go hire someone here. But if these people know that that's the reason why they're not getting things done, they can put in, barriers and constraints and things to make sure that, hey, let's keep the meeting to an hour instead of 3. Let's assign action items to every one of us to make sure we go off and do it and say what time it's going to get done. Because you can't fix a weakness and be more agile unless you know where there's the gap. Our tool allows a company and a team and a department to identify gaps in diversity of thinking. Let's say over here on work styles, this is a group, for instance, 90% of the people are really creative. And that might be great for a startup, and it was for us, for instance. I think the number was 92% were creative. And we were having trouble systematizing and putting in structure, predictability, and proven methods. Basically, we were having trouble scaling our startup 3 years ago because we had no systematic people. We didn't realize that until we built this tool and realized we either have to hire over here or let people know that this is our weaknesses and we need to work on putting structure to a project, to an implementation, so we can onboard and implement 30 customers or 40, not just one-offs. So these are just very practical ways that a tool like this can help leaders and teams work better together and be more diverse in their thinking, which at the end of the day is the key diversity for better productivity and performance. Chris, Reggie?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing I would say is nobody is saying here in this conversation that having diverse races, ethnicities, genders, all of that, we still think that's all very important. The truth of the matter is, though, what happens oftentimes in organization is they just go out and try and look for people that have different things like that, but they still all think the same. And our goal is to say, let's make sure that you're looking at all the aspects, diversity, dimensions, primary, secondary, all of those things, as well as thought, as well as style backgrounds, motivators, all of those things. So you're putting it all on the table together. That probably can sound, really overwhelming, but with this tool, that takes what might be feeling overwhelming and makes it really simple and easy to use as a resource to be more effective.
Yeah, and these are just screenshots. The tool actually does interpret and produce tips and nudges that help the person who's not an IO psychologist understand what the gaps are and the strengths and the weaknesses and what they can do better.
Excellent.
So next we have, on Microsoft Teams, this is what it looks like. You can go in and click on any one person and get insights. Again, seeing individuals. It's great for onboarding diverse thinking people who are different. Again, here's a picture of Zoom and Microsoft Teams where you can pull up on the sidebar right now on this Zoom. We could pull it up if we're at the same company. Any one person, their communication tips, the things around that person, such as communicating with Beth, how to motivate Beth, her or his learning styles, their key archetypes, all of these things either on the full screen for you, you can pull up the team culture, you can pull up on the side for only you to see if you'd like, as well as for meeting tips here in the left top, and these kind of diverse views and visualizations for a team, new teams working together as a kickoff call. Hey, let's see our strengths and our weaknesses before we, begin the journey of working together. Great for companies that work cross-functionally and teams that work cross-functionally, or new employees joining teams. This is the last product slide. Any other comments there, Chris or Reggie, before we move on?
The only thing I would add is I think it gives everybody an opportunity to move from good to great. And I don't want to assume that everybody's good. We know that there sometimes are areas where people are, really struggling, and we talked about some of those things at the beginning. But at the end of the day, this really, kind of creates a practical and sustainable way to think about how to work with people as individuals, and especially as we work across lines of difference. Big part of our work talks about how, when you are working well with people like you, why is that? And so how do then you take that and then put that into play as you work across lines of difference, which oftentimes requires a different approach, different thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors to do that effectively.
Yeah, and when I first started talking to you about this, I started to think about all the people I had to get this information from individually. So I had to work with Amy and find out, okay, Amy wants me to send her emails. She doesn't like for me to give her a call, or just these things. And it takes a lot of time to figure that out. So to have some of this information in real time as I'm going through, I think is really, really helpful. So you give me a lot. You give me a lot to think about. I'm trying to figure out how come it's not on my computer already. But anyway,
coming soon, Reggie. Coming soon.
Okay, thank you. Coming soon. Can we kind of summarize what? There seems to be a lot of reasons to do this. So help me with that.
Yeah, and before I go to that next slide, I was just thinking, Accenture, they have some really smart people at that, largest consulting firm, and they have a talent and organization, culture, leadership consulting group. They're going to actually use this not only internally, but over the next couple months, start to resell it to all their clients and leverage it with them. And they came up with great phrase for this. as every individual needs to have a healthy experience and well-being, every team needs a healthy team toolkit. And they kind of positioned this as a healthy team toolkit that allows every leader, every team, and every individual to be agile. Because we all have our ways of operating. We have our ways of our behaviors, our motivations, our work styles. And we're not asking anybody to change inherently. We're just asking people to say, hey, you know what? You're a basketball player, you're right-handed. How good of a teammate are you? And how good of you are you as a human, as a basketball player, if you don't know how to use your left hand? So if you're decisive every day and make quick decisions, it's probably going to be good for you one day to learn how to be deliberate. If you put a lot of detail on things, it's probably gonna be good for you one day to maybe also learn how to be conceptual. So across 18 attributes in behaviors, motivators, and work styles, wouldn't it be great to have self-awareness so that you can be more agile as a leader, as a team, and as individuals working together, so everyone can improve and be more agile? Accenture really believes that the quality that's going to allow companies to succeed and be competitive advantage over other companies is where you have agility throughout your organization. And this tool is the first tool in the world that allows for scaling agility across a company.
I love that. So Lindsay is trying to get in. I just want to mention, Juan, I can use both my left and my right hand. So but Lindsay wants to get in. She had her hand up.
Yeah, team, this is an awesome tool. Great discussion. We have 2 questions in the chat directly associated with the tool. So I want to jump in here and address those. So does this tool require each person to fill out these components within the platform in order to get the data to leverage? Or is it something that we gain over time in a different way?
Great question. So it's really simple. It's a link that a company sends to everyone that they want to be part of this. So whether it's 50 people division or 500 people or all 50,000, and it's a personality test, or what you call a questionnaire. 10 minutes, 36 questions, you force rank the 4 answers. And after those 10 minutes, it fills in all the things you saw. It's all that information gets filled in. That's what's so amazing. The amount of information around your communication styles, what you like to, how you influence people, how you're motivated, your work styles, your learning styles, all of these different components flood throughout all your collaboration tools the minute people take it. It's so simple. It's better than ShamWow.
Excellent. Thank you, Juan. That was very helpful. And then one more here. Is there an option to provide the assessment to a potential hire so that you could see how that hire would potentially fit within the team you currently have?
Yeah, so we also have a tool called Talent Fit for recruiting. And it's for hiring. We call it fit because fit could be to clone your high performers, like in a sales or call center or manufacturing line. So half the roles in a company, you kind of want to clone performance and look for the same. But the other half of companies, fit is actually culture add or something different. And just like a shoe, one person could be a soccer player and a runner, and a great fitting shoe could be tight for the soccer shoe, but loose and toe extended in the running shoe. A lot of people make the mistake to think fit means the same. Fit can be the same, and fit can be completely opposite. If you have a team of all decisive people, the right next fit for that team should be someone who's deliberate, because you don't want everyone thinking the same. And so we do have a tool, and they can reach out to us called Talent Fit for recruiting, where you basically benchmark already what you have, and you can then hire objectively and get rid of the subjectivity, whether you want to clone certain profiles or add culture.
Great. Thank you, Juan. That was very helpful.
So here are some of the overall things that a tool like this can help. It improves team effectiveness, performance, and as I mentioned, agility. As Chris started the conversation, this is a way of operationalizing your DEIB efforts. It improves engagement, employee experience for these remote hybrid environments. So people actually retain more employees. People don't quit now because they're more engaged. It creates a high culture of performance. And it is simple, scalable, and easy. 100% of employees in 24 hours. It's that simple.
And I would only add that for anybody who either does work globally or exists globally, it's very resonant for not just people here in the US, but across, you saw many countries.
And-
So it does work, across that major important component.
Yeah,
in
our
building up.
our biggest clients are the ones that have operations across countries because they're struggling with, hey, we have developers, for instance, high tech. We have developers in China and Costa Rica and Argentina. And it's not good enough to say, well, Argentines communicate this way.
No.
French are this way. Every person is different. And so the more diverse cultures, ethnic cultures, the even more powerful this tool is.
Very helpful.
So we're gonna have our last poll. Lindsay, you're up.
Sorry about that. I was trying to get on my camera here for you all to see me. Okay, so we're going to launch this final poll. So if you have a formal DEIB program, which of the following are you focusing on? Diversity and demographic representation, diversity of thought or life experiences, diversity and generational representation, and or ensuring everyone feels included and has a sense of belonging, tracking and maximizing engagement, promotion, and retention for diverse employees. For this one, I believe you can select all that apply. Okay, we have 31% participation. Let's get a couple more in there. All righty. Couple more seconds here. We got 43%. All right, we're going to end this poll here and share the results. Team, over to you for the interpretation of this data.
Chris?
Yeah, I think everyone feeling included and belonging is on everyone's radar. I think that's very real. I also noticed, unfortunately, we were missing the last option of tracking and maximizing engagement. So if that was something that was important to you and it didn't show up in your poll, you can put it in the chat, of course. And so I think from there, then I think people are looking at other different elements around diversity of thought, demographics, and generation, which makes sense. But I think starting at the top and fundamentally with inclusion and belonging is what's most important for people right now. And it's definitely what we're seeing out in the marketplace as well.
Great. Before we have one in this, I just want to mention again that if you'd like to schedule a 30-minute complimentary consultation, you can send an email directly to Jody Matus at kgdiversity.com. That is in the chat, so you can actually click on there and get all of our information from there. And then Juan, close it out.
Great. So just so you know that you're not alone if you move forward with tools like this, there are a lot of companies, some here in this slide, and partners who also believe like you in diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Honda, Ashley Furniture, Dollar General, Merck, BASF, many, Coca-Cola, all these companies have invested, as you know, in tools for diversity, equity, inclusion, including ours. Partners, Accenture has kind of invested more than anyone in launching this tool internally, as well as going to market with their own clients around tools like this. Other partners we've worked with to integrate our solution, so it is throughout workflows of all your HRIS systems are these following, and we've won over 18 awards from the industry for HR technology, for collaboration, culture, and inclusion and diversity, and users love us in all these different user industry awards. That's the end. Any questions?
Yeah, and so with that, we have at least a minute, Lindsay. I don't know if there are any questions out there that we can touch base on before we let people go. I would like to say, as you drop off to go to your next meeting, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We do know that you could have spent your time someplace else, and we hope that this information was very, very helpful to us. And you can reach out to us the various ways we put out there. Lindsay, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple questions that were sent directly to me in the chat. So team, are there any quick wins or fast ways to start fostering a culture grounded in inclusion for employees? Anything that they can do immediately?
Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, talking about what inclusion means in the organization and to the team. and understand and making sure that the team understands what those things are. And if they've done some of that, then really kind of taking it to the place of behaviors. What are those behaviors that the team, really needs to collaborate on and exhibit on a daily basis? And then starting to incorporate some sort of mechanism, a pulse mechanism, to say, hey, how are we doing it with this? And doing some checking on that on a regular basis, and then adjusting based on what people share on that. So that would be my initial understanding, just based off of just a question like that, but would be happy to dig in a little further if that would be warranted.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, today when people think diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, a lot of it's really focused on race mistakenly. And so it's a charged elephant in the room. And a lot of people are scared, right? It's like, am I going to get fired if I'm going to say something wrong? So one way of getting around that, but still getting to it, is moving inclusion and belonging as a discussion around people's personalities, how everyone's different, how on a team of 5 African Americans working together, you still need inclusion and belonging. On a team of 5 white people in Alabama working together, you still need to talk about inclusion and belonging.
Yeah.
5 Cubans working in Miami with me, if I were in that situation, you still need inclusion and belonging. If you start to move it away from race, you start to take away the charge and the elephant in the room feeling, and then it just becomes a more natural discussion that we're all different. So that the day that you add in, oh, and they're African American, and what does that mean? It's not this charged, scary thing. And it's just part of inclusion being like that slide around diversity. There's 50 things you can talk about within inclusion. I think that's the first step companies should do, instead of going straight to the most charged topic in the world where everyone's scared and, kind of like, frozen.
Well, we can see that both of you guys are charged. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Juan. We appreciate you guys joining us, and have a really great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of the year too. Take care.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
great end of the year, everyone. Thanks.